We're gonna get you. Gonna get you. Wait. You ready?
Yes. Yes, I'm back, and I'm super pumped for this brand new episode, episode 4 of making a stop motion mini-me. We still have bathroom dramas, it's ongoing, but as long as I've got your smiling faces here, I'll get over it. Let's continue where we last left off. We have my mini-me head right here, and what we need to do now is make it available to pour resin into it when we get to that point, and that means we need to have some kind of a pouring spout. Best solution for this, being a head, is to add a neck to it, which is exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm going to add a neck to it, and then when we encase it in the silicone, we will have a whole area where we can pour the resin in. This will all make sense when I start making it. Let's go. Okay, there we go. It doesn't have to be neat, it is purely for the pouring spout. But what it does do is it shows you what the neck will actually look like when we do eventually put a neck onto it. The neck won't be hard like this because it's got to be able to move around and get manipulated. It will eventually be done in silicone. That will be done in a later episode. For now, this is a pouring spout. This obviously needs to go into bake, and then we're getting on to the really good stuff, which is encasing this model, this head, in a 2-part silicone so we can make a cast. Okay, we have a finished sculpt. Now this is probably going to be the last time that we're going to work on this and even use this, because we are now going to cast this in a silicone so that we can then make a resin mould. Here is the silicone putty that we are going to use. This is called silicone and you can get it on Amazon. I'll give you the link below. I got this from Fred Alders. I've told you about Fred Alders before. It's a great place, but you can get this, I am pretty sure you can get this from Amazon, and I will give you the link in the description below. Let's start off by opening it up. What we get is 2 parts. It's in a putty format, and we mix equal amounts of the putty together. We knead it together in our hands. All we're going to do is encase a whole head of my mini-me in this putty, and it takes about 5 minutes and then it's set. It's as simple as that. So easy. What you want to make sure is that you don't scrimp on how much of the putty that you use. The last thing that you want is to have to add more later. You can do, but you need to be quick. It's very important to keep these 2 parts away from each other. Don't mix them unless you really have to, because once it's been mixed, that's it, it's finished with. We're looking at trying to get equal parts. We don't need to measure it out, we just need to make 2 balls. As soon as they look roughly the same size, then we know we're ready to work. Now ideally what you're looking at, if you think that this would encase one side of the head, then you've got enough of the mould. And you can kind of do that, you could gauge it now. Now I know that there isn't enough there, so I'm going to add more to. Once you've gauged one, then the other side should be, you should be able to get the right amount with the other one as well. So if you were to encase that we're almost there. I'm going to add a little bit more because I'd like to have more than I need to play with. I'm happy that that ball of putty would cover at least 1/2 of the head, which means that if I get the same exact amount in the other compound, when we mix together we know we're going to have enough. Okay, I'm happy. I think that they are roughly the same size, the same volume, which means that when these two get mixed together they will set as a silicone. As you can see, I kept lids separate as well. You don't want to pop the blue lid on the white lid just in case it can cause some kind of contamination and end up setting all of the putty. So there's plenty still left in that. That's a 300 gram mould. There's still plenty in there to do more moulds. Now we want to get ourselves all set up and raring to go, because we are going to now encase this putty once we've mixed it all together around the head. Here goes, let's get mixing. Just got to knead it together. You've got about 5 minutes before it starts setting, but that's obviously once it's all been mixed. So really give it a good vigorous mix. You'll know when it's right because you won't see any white bits, and it will go to a bit of a lighter blue than the blue that you already had. It's a good little workout, and if you've got any stress you can stress it out. Let me think about the bathroom and all the problems I've got. Okay, we are getting there. Now is the point where we are going to start wrapping it around the head. Now I'm going to go into two sections again, so we're back to the halves that we had before, and I'm going to just very quickly now slap it on. And what I'm doing is, excuse me, I'm pushing the mould, or I'm pushing the silicone right into the mould and trying to make sure that I'm getting into all of the nuts and crannies that are in it. You've really got to start pushing it in there, and then smack, we're going to bang the top piece on as well. And we are just trying to encase the whole of the head with the silicone. And we really want to be, it doesn't have to be too neat, but what we are making sure that we're doing is pushing into all of the crevices and all of the nuts and crannies that we've made from the head. We are, as you can see, I've left the neck, and that is so that we have a pore hole, as I've already said, and we just need to make sure that when we're kind of pushing this in, that we feel like we've got a good substantial amount of thickness around the outsides, that it's not too thin that it could potentially rip when we reopen up the mould. So you have to be quite careful. I'm just doing a very tight squeeze on it because I want to make sure that we have got into all of those nuts and crannies to get the detail out. And it does just mean that you have to do a very tight, just a squash, and you're just squashing and making sure that you have all of that detail in the mould. This is a very strong, hard wearing silicone. It will last for quite a long time, which is great. Again, it's something that you want, because if you have any issues with the head, or I drop the head and snap it, this mould will do about 15 to 20 of these heads before it starts to deteriorate. We're just leaving this now for around 5 minutes. But a good way to check whether the mould is done, just try and put your nail into the mould, and if it's bouncing back, then you know you're good to go now. So what I'm going to do, I'm not too minded now about the model the head is finished with. I'm more bothered about the mould itself. I'm going to start cutting into this. Now I want to make sure that I cut deep enough to cut all the way through the silicone rather than doing it in a few different cuts. So I'm going to start on one side. And I'm making sure that when I'm cutting I can feel the knife hitting the model. We want that, because then we know we've cut all the way through where we need to. Okay, now that should be the completed mould. Now as you can see, it flaps open a bit here. It flaps open a bit, but what will happen is when we pour the resin in, this will get shut back closed with an elastic band and form the seal. But there we have the completed silicone mould. And there we go, we have him out. Ta-da! There he is.